Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. This is the Chronicles of Apple from the apple of my eye, and I practically can't see my face while I'm videotaping. But this is Los Lobos, and it has really interesting sand. Anyhow, I want to do this video on account that I'm praying for Israel, and there's been a pretty hard hit last night, and I was actually up real late as well at 2 in the morning, and uh, at this point, I think 30 people are injured and a couple people are pronounced dead. So it's a sad moment, but I know that we're past the 390 days of war, and there's probably going to be another 38 some days going left. And we have to really pray for the strength of Israel, which is the Lord. The strength of Israel is the Lord because of Ezekiel. And as I mentioned before, I'm gonna go up because it's gonna be kind of hard to. I just figured out I gotta show this to people. It's so beautiful back here. Look at that. Look at that. There are people just enjoying the view. It's like so sweet. And a couple of Indian taking their pictures with their baby. So I'm gonna get in my car because there's several points to this, but this one is right across monastery. So this is around, whoop, almost tripped. So anyhow, I'm praying for Israel, for the strength of Israel, because we have to continually face Jerusalem and fight in this war. And there's a spiritual war, and it's also a physical war. So it's a very convoluted and sorry. Oh, I gotta go inside because it'll be too loud. So it's a very convoluted war that we have right now, and this puts the whole world in a particular spot where we have to make choices. So as the coming election is coming, we really have to pray. I gotta catch my breath. We just really gotta pray for the strength of Israel and for more people to come to Israel. And in the book of Ezekiel, there is really no time to mourn. It's one after another, and Israel have to face Jerusalem in the midst of this war while fighting the enemy to sustain themselves in the land. And it is a very it's heart-wrenching, and at the same time there's a lot of victory because they already are able to technically get into Iran. They already proved it that they can get into Iran, and Iran actually cannot intercept them that much because the radar system is messed up. I think strategically, Israel needs to be well aware of the radars everywhere in the Middle East, and they have to practically make sure that they know where those radars are, because this is predicted in the Bible that it is not just going to be Iran. That Iran is just part of it. It's going to be Turkey. It's going to be some parts of Africa. It's also Libya, and Turkey is a big one. Now, for some reason, they're talking about Russia because Russia does provide artillery to Iran, but at a losing cost. And I don't think Russia is giving Iran the best of the best. I think they are in connection with Iran for the purpose of, it is communism aligns with Islam, but Russia still has that Orthodox Christianity, so they don't necessarily bend on the same side as Islam. And it's been known in history, what is it, the Second World War or third world war. No, not third world war yet, not yet. Might be the second world war, where it looks like Russia was on the side of Germany and then they flipped. And I won't be surprised if Russia would again flip. Okay, so they're on the side of Iran for the purpose of money making. And I'm pretty sure because Russia is at war, they're not tossing Iran, they're the best of the best, but rather for financial gain. And it can only go so far, and they know that they're losing. Iran is losing, and it's predicted that in the next 30-40 days, there will be a change in the regime in Iran. And that is because 80% of the people is heavily against the Islamic regime. And what's remaining, actually, it's very similar to the US, where I believe America have no choice but to have the Democratic Party, because there is no, they rig this entire election. But that's just my personal opinion. I believe that most Americans are on the Republican side, but we all know that there are puppets on a string, and which is our Democratic Party. And there are some puppets to the Republican Party, but more so in the Democratic Party. And this is where we're at. I gotta turn the car on. It's a little hot now. So it's always kind of chilly around Monterey, but uh, I just that's too loud. Okay, so I'm trying to regain my train of thought, with this beautiful place, and the Lord is putting in my heart to continually pray for Israel and to encourage them to have a strategy. And I think one of the best strategy, me personally, is to, because this is bound to be a multi-Atlantic kind of war, where it's not just in the Middle East. Okay, we have war in Ukraine and Russia still, and a big heavy blow going on there. But this is a repetition of what was previously done, and it's a repetition with a slant of Islamic invasion. So Islamic invasion is all over the Middle East, obviously, because Islam is a newer religion, and the spread of Islam does not want Israel to be alive. It doesn't want it to be in coexistence. Therefore, Israel is now facing the facts that they cannot have a two-state solution, which I am glad that this is now very clear to most people in Israel. And as Christians, we have to be patient, because the Jewish people have a spiritual blindness. But this does not mean that they are spiritually deaf. So the spiritual blindness is that they just cannot see Jesus Christ as the Messiah. But they are aware and becoming more aware that in all of the Old Testament, the promised Son is the Messiah, who is Christ Jesus. So there is a growing number of Messianic Jewish Christians, and for that, it's the greatest victory, honestly. And the next victory that's taking place is that Iran is becoming weaker and Hezbollah is getting weaker. Except that the target in the central part of Israel, this is quite, I would say, the second most devastating, because for the longest time they've lost a lot. They lose about 1 to 2 soldiers per day. So that is a lot of soldiers getting lost for Israel. They don't normally lose that much people, but this war in particular is just like Ezekiel has to part his hair. He had to take locks of his hair, and a third, and different percentage of his hair will be burned. And that's what's happening to the military. And it's they don't have time to mourn. And this war looks like it's going to continue 30-40 more days, as is like written in the book of Ezekiel, and more prophecies are saying that it is the Ezekiel War. So the Ezekiel War is about our time, or at least a repetition of what took place before. And close to about I think 385, this war has shifted from the Lebanon, from Gaza, West Bank, Lebanon, and it is now shifted all the way in Iran. And Iran has struck Israel October 1st, and the retaliation that took place in the last several months had been the assassination of their leaders. And Sinwar is gone, so Hamas is now weaker. I'm sure they put a replacement there. And then my watch wants me to keep drinking. I'm trying to hydrate myself. So with this war continuing and this 30 people that got injured, that's pretty big for Israel. Um, that's like equal to 30,000 Americans dying in one sitting, if we are to compare it, because Israel is a tiny country. It's about the size of New Jersey, maybe. And the entire Middle East, if you look at Iran, is 50 times as bigger than Israel. And it is written in Jeremiah 38 or something, that Elam is going to go down and God is going to basically sit there. So he will make it happen. God will make it happen that the Islamic regime in Iran is going to go down. And then the Gog Magog, the way I see it, I don't see it as Russia. Everything is being blamed on Russia. But this is not Russia. It's more Meshech and Tubal and Togarmah is pertaining to Turkey. And the book of Revelation is all about Turkey. Okay, so in the last days, the different churches that is described in the book of Revelation with John is actually Turkey. So I believe this is the Ottoman Empire point 4. This is gonna be Ottoman Empire point 4, and the Ottoman Empire being backed up by the New World Order. So it's going to be the New World Order, because who is going to eventually, the temple is going to get built and temple sacrifices will ensue until such time. And then there are going to be a lot of, that's the tribulation, and a lot of falling away. But at the same time, there is going to be a lot of martyrs. So there are the faithful Christians that are going to die. And it will hit a certain point in the book of Revelation. It will hit the I think the fifth seal. The fifth seal after the tribulation. The fifth seal is going to be the increase of martyrdom of the Christians, and then the coming of Christ after the darkness ensues. It's going to be dark, to the point that even the stars will disappear in the sky. And I'm not really sure the stars are going to fall. But, like right now I don't know if in the Bible it says the stars are falling. I don't know if that is like in the book of Ezekiel, there appears to be what looks like a nuclear war that's going to take place in Israel, and most likely around the sea area. And it's going to blast. It looks like a nuclear war is going to hit Israel at some point. And I believe this is why more and more Jewish people are actually going to flock into Israel, because they're being called, and at the very least, they have to gather around wherever they are all over the world. We have almost... we are the second biggest Jewish population in the U.S. And so that means that the people outside, which is in the U.S., the reason why U.S. is a target, because a lot of our Jewish people is also here. So Israel have about 6-7 million, I think, and then another 5-6 million in the U.S., and then several others all the way in France and what have you. And the difference between the Islamic versus the Muslim is that the Islamic does not value, they value death, whereas in Judaism they value life. So they will never, it's hard to mix. There's a clash, but the more Israel faces Jerusalem, which this war is all about Jerusalem, uh Islam does not want people to worship facing Jerusalem. They want to be continually rebellious, and there's a level of ignorance among the Muslim people facing the Qibla, which is in Mecca. So they're facing away from Jerusalem. Whereas in Ezekiel, the Jews have to face Jerusalem continually for that 390 days, and we're done with 390 days, and we're now in the 40 days, last 40 days of this war. And there is bound to be a peace recognition afterwards. And this is 9 times out of 10 we are in that state already, where it's in the Ezekiel. Now they're saying that the Gog Magog, is gonna happen pretty soon in our time, and I am not 100% sure if there will be a break before that time. But they always knew that there is going to be a war that's going to take place around the Carmel area. And by the way, this is kind of close to Carmel. It's pretty much Carmel. I think Carmel by the sea stretches out to Point Los Lobos. And Carmel is in the northern part of Israel, I believe, in the because I remember going there a couple times at least, and out of the four. And um, in Carmel is where Elijah has to prove who God is to Jezebel. And Jezebel is the epitome of kind of like the, if you look at the Islamic, Jezebel is kind of like the Molech. She worships Baal, and it has that spirit of death. Like all of her prophets, what do they call that? Yeah, they would self-flagellate themselves. They're basically torturing themselves for their God, to receive the offering. But only the offering of Elijah is going to be taken up by the Lord. And it is bound to make the enemy look very laughable. And Iran keeps threatening and threatening, but I think they're continually going to look more and more laughable, to the point where it's like the emperor is naked. So we have now shifted. The world is now shifting from believing in the UN and UNRWA, except for the Muslim people, the very Muslim devout. More and more Muslims are actually renouncing Islam at this point, which is like a Paul-like conversion. And in the Jewish sector, we're praying for a Peter-like conversion, because Peter was in denial of Jesus Christ and then eventually received Jesus Christ. So it is interesting to me, because the name Peter, it's Pete, repeat, and then it has the when you say tertiary, it's 3, and then the word error is in the name of Peter. So Peter repeatedly erred. His error, which is basically a sin, his error is repeated 3 times. It's in the name of Peter. And this is something that I I somehow had like not an epiphany, but kind of like, I would call it a mnemonics. But Peter is extremely essential. He was the spokesperson for the apostles, technically, and he was always speaking up. But he made a lot of mistakes, especially denying Jesus Christ 3 times. And another thing that he was doing is that he was trying to stop the Romans from picking up Jesus Christ. And Jesus Christ had to fulfill the death on the cross. It will have to happen that the Romans are going to have to pick him up and all this stuff. So Jesus Christ also, healed Peter's ears. So there is a healing of the ear of the Jews. And you can also see that in Peter. Peter became upon this rock I will, Jesus spoke with Peter in Banias, in Caesar of Philippi. I actually went there last time I went to Israel, and I was with a lot of Palestinians, the Abraham tour. Those people did not know the Bible at all, but they pointed out that the place that we went to, is the Banias Falls, is uh, Caesar of Philippi, which is where Peter was given the key by Jesus Christ to show him the foundation, that he is, that upon this rock I will build my church. And it cannot be about Peter. I think that rock is Jesus Christ, because Peter, well, Petra is also means stone, and Jewish people is stein, is a stone. They are represented by different types of stones. The 12 tribes is with, 12 tribes of Israel, and there are 12 stones. Okay, so depending on the type of stone is the type of tribe that you're under. And so Peter, being a representative Jewish person, is technically, there is a foundation, and the foundation of Peter is Jesus Christ. So it's not about the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church is a sinking sand, because the problem with the Catholic Church, and more people are going to find this out, is because you can see now that the Pope is unbiblical. Okay, and the reason why the Pope is unbiblical is that he's from the Jesuits. And the Jesuits in particular knows that it's ins and outs in the deception of the Catholic faith, of which this current Pope right now, Pope Francis, is what they call Pope Francis, is one of the most flawed Pope you could ever have. It's basically leading to Satanism and Luciferianism, because he's saying that everybody serves the same God, and we're not that's not true. Not everybody is serving the same God, because if you're talking about the God of Israel, Christ is very particular where he's at. Okay, where the Bible came out of. It didn't happen in India or anywhere else, but it happened in Israel. Everything, the redemption of man, happened in Israel. So the enemy wants to extract that very thing where the salvation of man originated, where it's a touchdown, where Jesus Christ finally did what he had to do to win the souls of men. So going back to this war, with the next 30-40 days of war that's gonna ensue, we have to be on high alert, and there is barely any time to mourn, and the people held hostage are still held hostage. And I believe there is an answer to it towards the end, and it is practically, it's part of God's punishment upon Israel to go through this. But everybody also must repent. All the nations have to repent. And so the more the Jews come to face Jerusalem and to face the Lord's strength, and to be, to look for the strength of the Lord in their midst of suffering, this is when the nations are going to be judged by God, depending on, like you can see how in Spain and Ireland, their transgression has caused a lot of floodings. In the US as well, it's a wake-up call everywhere. In the Philippines, and there's only 5 nations recognizing Israel, which is really, really sad. And I'm really praying that the Philippines be on the side of Israel, and the US as well. I think the US is on the side of Israel, but there's Papua New Guinea surprisingly on the side of Israel. And that was quite amazing. But what happened to the Philippines? What happened to Korea? What happened to the rest of the Christian European nations and Australia. I mean, what happened that they're not recognizing Israel? So we have to pray for this because calamity is going to hit left and right and famines and stuff as the tribulation eventually gets put in place. And the tribulation is going to hit, you know, and we will see worse things happen in history. But we are individually called by the Lord to be on his side and to root for the right team, which is Israel. So again, I think one of the better strategies is for Israel to be on the lookout for every radar of any one of those New World nation, pivotal for the destruction of Israel. They have to continually gather the Jews in their country, get people from outside of the country back into Israel, regardless of this war ensuing. And we need a lot more EMT to go to Israel. And yeah, there is a potential nuclear explosion that will take place, but we still got to pray because the best way to read the book of Ezekiel and understand it is to start from the back to the front, because most of the stuff at the front is either happening or happened already, but the stuff in the end and in the middle is yet to come. And we're hitting, I think, Ezekiel. Some people think we're already on Ezekiel 38. So we will see, but it is on Ezekiel. And there's still going to be something happening in Jordan and in Egypt regarding this war. And the fact that the central part of Israel is hit, you could just see the vileness. They are targeting the civilians in Israel. So that doesn't matter if you're a Jew or not. It's a target for them. And they're going into that belly of Israel. And it is going to, this is the time where the cards are, it's to me like the straw that breaks the camel's back. At some point, Israel is gonna totally ditch, not only the United Nations, but all the countries that are going against it. There's gonna be a growing number of countries against Israel, but they're gonna remain strong and win this war. And there is bound to be a peace treaty coming up, and it looks like Iran is going to have a revolution, and they're gonna have to change the regime once and for all. And in the meantime, we are all going to gather around as Christians and Jews in support of Israel and be part of the restoration of Israel, regardless of what war continually ensues, because there is a restoration of Israel that's bound to happen. And I think the damage was in Tel Aviv, but I know in my heart the Lord can restore Tel Aviv or whatever the damage is very quickly. So anyway, I'm going to end right here. Thank you and God bless.